Hello.
Well, isn't this nice?
Yeah, this was a nice one. We haven't done a white in a while.
Oh my God, Erin. That's one of your faves, isn't it?
It's my go-to. Australian Sauvignon Blanc. Not even a spenny. And I have to say, I don't feel like you always have to spend the money on a wine like that.
That's lovely. Oh, okay. All right.
Get us in the mood for our conversation that we're having today.
This one's quite an interesting one, isn't it? Because I think we've got really different exposures and experiences for this one. And I think it'd be really interesting, actually, if some of the listeners, will kind of comment on this, because I'm really intrigued on how this this topic is kind of either perceived or, the thoughts, experiences other people have had as well, which I'm sure might be the same as what you're kind of going through.
And the stigma as well.
Yeah. That's a really good point, actually. So basically, one of the things that we thought was that we've talked about kind of briefly before off cam, off pod, maybe I should say, is it's about raising boys and the sort of the whole experience of that. And I don't mean it just as in raising children. It's more about you as a mom and kind of that whole kind of exposure experience, how people interact with you and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Because it's something that we have kind of spoken about, isn't it?
Yeah, and what society sort of dictates to you, what people speak to you about, how they perceive your life to be, and all of those sort of things. And actually what you feel it does in terms of changing your life, or how your life may be different if you have a girl and in comparison to boys. So it's an interesting one. So I think we've obviously spoken about a lot already in our previous episodes about sort of our family setup. So I've got 2 boys, you've got Sophia, and then sort of 2 stepsons and then an older stepdaughter.
Yes. So obviously we're blended family, the zoo, as I nickname us. On all our birthday cards, it's the zoo. I would say a partial exposure, because one of the things with kind of being part of a blended family, that obviously, that the boys live with their mum the majority of the time. We're kind of weekend parents, and then obviously we get more time with them in the holidays and things like that. But I certainly have been exposed, I think, to some of the things that kind of you've talked about, but it certainly hasn't been on the same level. So I'm really curious and interested to kind of hear sort of that experience that you've had, because I certainly think that some of the things you've told me when we've been socializing previously have been quite surprising for me as a, I would say, a girl mum, because of Sophia being a 24/7 child rather than, the rest. So tell me, when you had the boys, I mean, did you have anybody who in your family who really wanted boys? You know how there's always someone who wants one gender over the other?
Yeah, so, and he wouldn't mind me saying it now, I'm sure, because it's quite honest, and I'm sure really relatable for a lot of males, is Rory really wanted to have a boy. And when we first found out that we were having Freddie, before we actually found out it was a boy, he would quite openly say, I want it to be a boy. And I would get quite defensive of my not yet known gendered unborn child, being like, well, what if it's a girl? How can you say you want a boy when how can you feel like that? And he's like, well, I can't help how I feel. And I guess secretly in my heart of hearts, I might have wanted it to be a girl, maybe.
And do you know what drove that? Because you just said that obviously Rory tends to be it is kind of a male thing, that they'd like to have a son, they'd like to have a boy. Do you feel that was a similar approach for you, or did you want to go for a certain reason?
I think I wanted maybe a girl, so I had a girl. And I think Rory wanted to have a boy first, so he had a boy.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
It's almost too simple, isn't it? It's almost too,
almost to get it out the way, and then you don't have to worry about the genders in the future. So when we found out we were having a boy, Rory was over the moon, and I was over the moon, absolutely, because in reality, I say, in my heart of hearts, I might have wanted a girl. I really didn't care. I was just felt so blessed that I was having a baby, and it really didn't bother me that much. And then when we found out that we were pregnant again, second baby, you always get those questions. Oh, do you want it to be a girl? Oh, you've got a boy now. And I think maybe subconsciously I thought, oh, it would be lovely if it was a girl. Like,
so do you think people saying that to you did that impact you on how or what you were thinking about the pregnancy and about the child itself?
I think I'd told myself the likelihood would be it's a boy.
And why did you think that?
Because then I maybe wouldn't have been disappointed.
Okay, so you're protecting yourself slightly.
Yeah, and again, disappointed is definitely the wrong word, because it's not like that with babies and your children.
Oh yeah, once you see them, it's like every single preconceived notion goes out the window. You're just like, oh my God, I adore this thing.
But I just think in society, you know, when you're growing up and you're playing mums and dads as a child, you've got mummy, daddy, boy and girl. You know, and that's actually the family I sort of grew up in. Like, there was boys and girls.
Yes, yeah.
And that just felt like normal for me.
Yeah. So in terms of sort of, you know, I don't want to call them challenges, maybe the experiences that you've had, what kind of things have really sort of got to you? What kind of things have really sort of got, because you mentioned before about people asking and things like that. What kind of things, did anything kind of really challenge you emotionally, like kind of going, oh, I wish people would shut up? Or, you know, is there anything that kind of really got you about what's going on?
Not with number 2 being a boy, but I feel like once somebody knows that you've got 2 of one gender, the question will always be, oh, are you going to try again for a girl? Are you going to go for number 3 now in the hope that it's a girl? Well, no, because the logistics of life actually make me think that 3 children wouldn't be right for us. And I just know we would have a boy. I just know. So you've got
a gut feeling that you just know it would be a boy?
It would be a boy. And then I would have 3 boys, which, again, amazing. Yeah. But I don't desperately want a 3rd child to take that risk, I guess. If somebody said to me, guaranteed, absolute guarantee, you will have a baby girl, then I do think maybe Rory and I would think about it, really think about it. And again, maybe not right now, because the age, I feel like we're so out of the baby bit now. Yeah. But a couple of years ago, I think if it was a dead cert, we might have gone for it. But the odds are stacked against us, really. And you see so many people, you know, like celebrities or whatever, like banging out loads of kids. And
do that.
But you know,
and they've got like 3 under 5, exactly. And I'm like, how do you do that?
And it's like boy, girl. Okay, no more kids.
Oh yes, like the Beckhams.
Yes, the Beckhams. That's who I was thinking of.
Yeah. It's such an interesting one. So my dad's one of 7, and so I've got a huge family, and you know, and we're northern, so we're all like in each other's pockets all the time, and I absolutely adore them. But there's been such a mix and a blend. But I have to say, I've never experienced any of the questions like you said you've experienced. And that when we talked about it, that shocked me. And it's kind of like unfair. I felt really protective of you then, going, don't ask her. Like, why would you ask her? But then society's so weird. Like, we have these expectations, and I don't understand where they come from or why. Is it, you know, how you're saying about having that girl-boy balance, whereas life just isn't that predictable.
No. So you had, obviously, the stepchildren, the older children. Yeah. So when you were pregnant with Sophia, what were you hoping for? What did you think you were going to have?
So, I mean, you know what I'm like. I psychoanalyze myself like 100 times a day. Now, every single day of my pregnancy, I'm like, really, you know how you're saying about in your heart of hearts and your heart of hearts, and I'm going, what do I want? And it literally changed every day because I was so in love with the 2 boys, particularly because at the time I was pregnant, George was 8 and Maxwell was 5, I think. Oh, I'm going to get this all wrong, but I'm sure they were. And I was so in love with them. And I just thought, I want another boy. I look at these 2. They're just wonderful. I adore them. And then having Maddie as well, who was 50, no, she was 18. She was 18, I think. And, you know, having known her as well and looking at her, I was like, oh no, I want a girl. I want another girl. I want a girl. And then I was like, oh, but it would be nice because we've got 1 girl, 2 boys. Let's have another girl because then it's 2 girls, 2 boys. And I just didn't, I was literally going, and I And weirdly, you know how you're saying about people kind of putting pressure on you? I was kind of putting pressure on myself because I thought people were going to ask me. So I was like, oh, I need to have an answer. Do you know what I mean? It was really curious how I kind of managed it. And I generally, even right up to the point that I'd gone in for the induction, I generally didn't know.
Oh, so you didn't know what you were having, so you didn't find out. Whereas we found out with both of them at like 20 weeks or whatever, so we could like feel prepared.
Yeah.
But in the lead up to that, I don't know if you ever looked into it, but I was doing every theory under the sun. You know, the nub thing, the swingy necklace pendant thing, Chinese calendar, all of this stuff. And you really can find the answer, whatever you want.
So when you did it keep pointing to a boy?
Pretty much kept pointing to a boy. And I would keep looking to see, this one told me it's a girl, it must be a girl, must be a girl, must be a girl.
It's so weird, isn't it? So I was doing it, and admittedly it was pointing to Will. And I mean, I know this is kind of digressing the fact that we're talking about being a boy mum, but when I was pregnant, one of the weirdest things that happened is that twice I got strangers approaching me, telling me that I was having a girl. Like out of nowhere. These people, I was on a bus in London, and this woman, I was going from Kilburn to Cricklewood of all places. And this woman came up to me, she goes, oh, congratulations, you're having a girl.
Right. That's pressure in itself, because I probably have been guilty of going up to somebody and being like, that's definitely a boy bump, or that's a girl bump, it's wide rather than outwards.
I do that as well. Like I look at, it's almost like the fun of the guessing game, but then quite rightly, like you just said, it could be pressure.
Yeah.
I didn't actually think about that. I could have actually been causing some of my friends pressure.
And that's the same as me.
Having fun.
Yeah, but then you're looking at it, convincing yourself that it's one or the other. So yeah, I might stop doing that now.
I agree. Because again, it's one of those things. It's about sort of, it's like when I'm thinking in my head about my sister when she was pregnant, and I was like, oh, let's see bump today, let's see. And I didn't really think about maybe the impact that could have been. I mean, I'm sure my sister would have very quickly told me if it had pissed her off. But, you know, the same thing is like you don't know what pressure or impact that's putting on someone, you know, even subconsciously.
Yeah. And we've spoken so many times about like etiquette, but there is definitely what is acceptable and what isn't acceptable when you're pregnant. And everybody thinks coming over and touching, stroking your bum.
What is that?
I don't know.
Honestly, like that was the thing that blew my mind, because I had not had that many friends who'd been pregnant before me. And I hung out with a load of gay men, so half of them wouldn't be pregnant. And people, and they're like looking at my belly going, what, consent? You know,
literally, it's just free reign. Come over and touch. So we've spoken now about like the whole like pregnancy thing, baby finding out you're having one gender or the other gender, and we obviously spend time together, and the children spend time together. From your perspective, then, when you look at my kids running around in comparison to how you see Sophia, like, what do you think the main differences are in terms of boys v girls?
So this is a really good question, because there's like 6,000 answers in my head. And not that I'm going to tell everybody all of them because it'd take too long. But so the first instant reaction to you asking that question is that gender shouldn't be a thing. It should be more about the individual kid. Like, you know, I shouldn't be looking at boys versus girls. I just should be looking at Sophia versus Max versus Freddie. Do you know what I mean? It's like, it's really difficult for me, because when I was pregnant as well, it was one of those things that I didn't want, if I was having a girl, I didn't want her to just be put in a pink corner. And if I was having a boy, I didn't want him to be put like with tractors and dinosaurs. Like, you know, it's something in my makeup that I don't believe gender needs to be an answer. But being now round children and seeing them interact now, whether society, nature versus nurture, do you know what I mean? It's a big question, but there is a difference when, you know, we were together the other week, and seeing the difference in how they interact is very different. Sophia, I think, tends to I mean, she's very dramatic anyway, but I think she is very aware of when she needs time out. She needs like some downtime. Whereas, like, you know, when poor Max was really tired, wasn't he?
Yeah.
And he wanted to keep going. He wanted to, you know, he wanted to be out there. He wanted to have the bubbles. He wanted to, you know, play with the things. And, you know, he wanted Spider-Man instantly, you know, and it was like, you know, the energy was so there.
Yeah.
You know, whereas Sophia probably would have recognized that before. Now, again, there could be an argument that, is that a gender thing? Is it just a personality trait? I don't know, but I don't know what your thoughts on sort of the differences are.
You can definitely see differences in the way in which they play, the way in which they engage. And the one thing that strikes me the most is actually when I see my boys playing with girls in comparison to when I see them playing with other boys.
Oh, really? Can you?
Yeah. So,
okay.
I think they enjoy playing with other girls because they get sort of different energy, different interests. It's like a different level. Whereas when they go in playing with boys, it's very much like, you know, like high energy most of the time, bit of rough and tumble, bit of arguing, rather than like considered play. And don't get me wrong, like Freddie especially can have some really lovely periods of considered play with his friends.
Yeah.
But it's not in the same way that like girls would have it, or he would have it when he's playing with a girl. And we certainly haven't, or didn't when they were little, like push gender stereotypical toys on them. Like we've got a little buggy, and the boys loved that, and I wasn't really like adverse to it. We've got a tea set, we've got all of that sort of stuff, because I think it's
just being a kid.
Exactly.
It's living life, isn't it? They see you drinking a cup of tea, cup of coffee. They want to have a tea set and drink.
But they love, and have always loved since very, very young, typical boys' toys.
Yeah. And this is the weird thing, because so when Sophia was born, I was very, very driven to make sure there was kind of gender neutral toys, like shops. You know, there was like shops was the big one for me, but like I was trying to kind of make sure that there was a balance between dinosaurs and dollies and, you know, all the rest, because toy stores very much do kind of put you in separate camps.
Yeah.
And it's one of those things that I tried so hard to make sure that there was no inclination, just so she could choose. Yeah. Now, Sophia has had that choice, and my God, has she gone full on pink unicorns, glitter, not dinosaurs. Well, she's got a dinosaur, admittedly, but you know, that's been her choice, and I'm now happy to honor that. But at the same time, it's really interesting, like you say, about the energy. So would you say, because one of the things I've noticed about Sophia, when she's with boys, she has a lot more, like, I would call it like sort of energetic fun. Whereas when she's with girls, they sit and they play.
Yeah.
And there is a difference. So would you say, what kind of influence do you think comes with, you know, Freddie having a like play date with boys or a play date with the girls? What kind of influence do you think it puts on him? So
I think he like takes more time to appreciate things when they're playing with girls.
Okay. So is it more that he sort of appreciates what he's doing?
Yeah, and a bit more like role play. I think girls naturally do that role play a little bit more. They're sort of the caring type, will do like mummies and daddies, or will like a shopkeeper or something like that. Whereas, you know, the boys just line up all the cars and smash them. But I find it quite interesting because I was raised in, I have sort of like two older brothers. My eldest brother didn't live with me when I was growing up. But my middle brother, I guess, in our family is only 2 years older than me. But I was very much a tomboy as a child.
Right.
So, you know, I would like play games with him, like PlayStation or cars. And I don't ever remember being desperately girly.
I was going to say, did you feel ever that you were missing out, or were you bothered, or?
Not really. Like I did have like
dolls. You'd have friends with like stuff.
Yeah. And I definitely had dolls and Barbies or whatever, but I probably wasn't, or I don't remember doing the sort of things that I see little girls do now. And I certainly wasn't dressing up in like princess dresses. I probably had a fancy dress box, but it wasn't walking around in Disney princess dresses like I see all the girls rock up to the parties in. There's nothing like that.
And do you think that had an influence on how you've raised the boys? Like, you know how you said about like, kind of you wanted them to be just them, and whatever they play with, and having those kind of different sort of stereotypical toys for either way, which way, you've made an effort to make sure they've got everything to go whichever kind of way
everything. Yet they're so ungrateful. There's never anything that they want to play with ever.
I'm bored. What?
I know.
But isn't this weird? Because we are so digressing, but the whole thing about boredom these days, I think, is a really different thing to when we were younger as well.
We just got on with it.
We just had to.
Yeah. And we didn't have the hundreds of toys like what we have now. And whenever the kids say to me, oh, I'm bored, I've got nothing to play with. And I was like, well, I'll go and take all of those toys somewhere else.
Yeah.
There must be something.
Yeah.
But then, there's so much behind like the theory of like toy rotation and stuff like that to keep it interesting, because you do just become blind to what you've got, in the same way that you become blind to the clothes in your wardrobe, or you become blind to like everything when you like see it all the time. So that does annoy me with them, and I do wish they went and like sort out like something to play with. But the boys are very energetic, and actually they like nothing more than like getting outside and doing stuff.
Yes. Yeah. They like the outdoors, don't they? They like that adventures.
Yeah.
Because actually, it's not necessarily about the outdoors. They just like being out and being on an adventure.
And burning the energy and getting it out.
Yeah. Didn't you say you were going to the playground at like 8 a.m. or something?
Yeah.
Whereas I'd be like, Sophia won't even get out. You barely get in a pair of knickers at 8 o'clock.
Yeah. But that's the energy that they've got. And I think if we don't sort of lean into that, then they are bouncing off the walls.
Well, this is it. And obviously you've got to lean into their cat. And this is this whole thing about whether it's gender, whether it's personality traits, or society dictating it. I mean, it is so existential. It kind of, it's a really important one, I think, to be able to observe that it might be something that society is putting on the genders, or whether it's something to do with the kind of biology of the different chromosomes. We don't, I can never really kind of pull it out, but the energy levels, like you're saying, are so different, and that's where like Sophia is always more hyped up when she's with boys, but and they are more adventurous, they are more kind of brave, I think,
just out there. So what's the so Sophia 5 now, like what are like a couple of things that you're like really looking forward to about sort of raising a girl or having a fully fledged woman as a daughter? Like, what are the key things?
So I think it's weird, because I've realised that because Maddie's now 22, and the boys, so George is now 13, Maxwell's 10, and I think looking at kind of that sort of growth that I've seen in all of them, I think Sophia and I would get on. I think, well, I hope we do. Just doing those fun things that you do as a child and a parent, like just going out, like going for dinner, and I mean, I have said it multiple times. I know I'm going to get judged, and please don't throw hate for this, but I do think she'd be a great drunk. I really think me and her would have like such a good time.
But do you feel like you're going to have to cultivate that relationship, or do you sort of just like rest on your laurels that it will be there? Because I think that's really interesting, because I think sometimes people just expect that there will be a parent-child relationship.
Yeah.
And actually, there is some science behind, what a parent has to do with a daughter comparatively to a son when they're sort of in their late teens. And, girls often like go away and then come back, boys stay longer and then go. And there's lots of differences. And I can like sort of relate that back so much to like my like life, and actually how the relationship with my mum had evolved is, we were always like close, like we were never like not close, but it took for me to move out at 19 for us to really get a relationship.
That's a really interesting one. I think, I don't know, it's hard, isn't it? Because again, this whole thing about like, where you live, what kind of lifestyle you had, what kind of experience you had. So, if your parents were full-time working and, they had no choice but to put you in childcare all the time, or so-and-so was babysitting because mum had to go, because mum's a nurse and she does night shifts, and I think it does come from that evolution of your relationship with your mum from the get-go. And like you're saying, sort of, there is a difference, you know, in terms of kind of like that whole setup of who, you know, remains close, who goes, who comes back. And, you know, if I kind of look at it where I think boys can be more independent quicker. From what I'm seeing anyway, this is all to do with what I'm seeing so far. You know, they're happy to make mistakes, whereas girls aren't. Girls are worried.
Yeah.
And again, I know I keep harping on about the gender thing, and I shouldn't be kind of going, you know, MF type of stuff, but there is a difference when I look at Mads and the way she is, she always wants to get everything right, and she's desperately trying to, you know, either please us or please herself. And, you know, she's so amazing. She's so funny. She's got such a wit about her, and she's so caring. She's got one of the biggest hearts, but she's always so scared of letting people down. Whereas the boys just Maxwell apparently is going to be a rock star, a footballer. And what was the other thing he was going to be? Literally, he's like, I'm going to be all of these things. And I'm like, go, do it. Yes. I mean, buy me a Lamborghini if you get there. But like, you know, he's got all this confidence. It doesn't matter. George is so calm. He's like, you know, like there is a difference. And I think that will impact your relationship as they grow.
Yeah. And you do have to put the energy in. And I think the only thing that I sort of say when people speak to me about, oh, what do you think your life's going to be like in the future, like with boys? And I do say, not having a baby girl isn't the thing that bothers me. And I think this is why I asked that question of you. Sometimes it's this feeling of what I might be missing out on later in life from not having a girl. And it's that like default relationship that, you know, a mother-daughter has, I guess, you know, the involvement at big life events, you know, weddings, babies, like all of that sort of stuff. It just feels always to be that mother-daughter thing. And when you are, you know, the mother of the son or the mother of the dad of the baby or the partner or whatever,
it's still at arm's length.
A little bit. And I don't know about you, but I see so many memes online. Maybe it's why I'm being served this stuff because it's within my algorithm about like, oh, I've just realised that I'm that side of the family.
Oh,
now.
Oh no, that's not fair.
So I've sort of said, and funnily, some of my closest friends, well, actually most of my closest friends are all boy mums too. So, you know, we're all in this same boat, and that makes me feel a bit better because I would be lying if I said when everyone started to have their second babies, there was part of me that was maybe a bit worried that everybody was going to end up with a boy and a girl or girls, and I was going to be the only one without, and I would then be the only one missing out on some of those key life moments. But actually, so many of us are in that same boat. So I feel like I've got like my tribe of like boy mum friends, and we're all going to be riding that wave, and we're now going to be those cool boyfriends, mums, where we're like inviting the girls in and being that family
and welcoming, and you're showing the boys how to behave and how to respect women. Yeah, I totally get that.
And I'm going to be that really cool mum of the boyfriend, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, I totally get that. And I think so one question I've got for you, and I mean, well, this is going too deep. Why do you think there's that FOMO? What's that come from? Where's that? Is that to do with your mum and you, or to do with?
I don't know. I think it's just like society.
You think it is?
I think it's, you know, the mother of the daughter that has the baby. Does that make sense? That's a long chain, but like the grandparents on the mother's side, or whatever, always seem to be more involved because the daughters have that relationship. You know, I know how frequently I text my mum and talk to her about the kids or send her a quick photo. And I'm guilty that maybe I don't do that to Rory's mum. I don't send her the photo. So what makes me think that any, you know, daughter-in-law of mine is going to take the time to send me something that she's sending her mum?
So let me ask you this. Could you get in front of this and commit and promise to yourself that you will be so present and you feel such a safe space for that girlfriend, boyfriend, partner, whatever.
That's what I'm saying. And
so you don't have that FOMO. There's no FOMO.
Yeah, I'm going to be that person. I'm going to create that space. We're going to have that house where, you know, the girlfriend, boyfriend, whoever it may be, comes round and they are just part of the family and probably overbearing. And I'm quite happy with that, actually. But I just don't want to miss out on like key moments.
I don't think you will, Erin, because you're aware of it. This is one of the things I think a lot of people don't realize. When you're worrying about something, it almost gives you a boost to make sure it doesn't happen. So when you're aware of something, it means that you'll make sure that won't happen to you, kind of in a way. So you know, you're more motivated to make sure that space will be inclusive, that the girlfriend feels welcome, not isolated, she won't be judged, you know, that kind of, you know, when things start to happen, like, you know, she'll feel safe talking to you about it and coming to have chats with you.
It's almost like you want to give your own child maybe the same experience that you had, or, you know, you...
Absolutely, I get that.
Yeah, and, you know, having those conversations, or knowing like how a conversation that I might have had with my mum, and I want to now have that conversation with my daughter, or that moment, or those sort of things. And actually, will my boys be like, no, mum, don't want to talk to you about that?
I don't think they will, because I think the way you are with you love those boys so fiercely, and you can see they adore you. And I know obviously they're only 5 and 3, but I genuinely feel the passion you've got for them, they will grow up knowing how loved they are, and they'll know that mum's a safe space to come and talk. Mum, I've really messed up. I need your help. Or, do you know what I mean? That I'd rather sort of you think and be confident that, you know, you're one of those welcoming people. You're like, anybody come talk to me. You know, you are so like giving. I really feel that that's something that will probably just evolve, because you're naturally wanting it to happen.
Yeah.
You believe in it so much, and I can see it, like you're literally visioning. You're like, I can see it kind of like, you know what you want it to be like. So it's almost like you're mood boarding in your head.
This is when I know we've spent too much time together, because that is literally what I was just thinking. I've been mood boarding it in my head. So this is sort of maybe just a point maybe to sort of like wrap up on, really. But what's the one thing like you're most worried about, I guess, in terms of like raising a girl?
It's got to be it's risk. It's the Sarah Everard sort of, you know, being out on a night. You know, sadly, I have been a victim of many incidents when I've been walking home from being out with my friends, being on a date. You know, I've been spiked, I've been attacked. Like I have had that, and that's my worry. That's the real thing, because I will never be able to always be there to protect her. And that, I even get emotional thinking about it, because I know what's happened to me and how much trauma that's caused me, and how many things have happened because of that, and things I've had to overcome to get where I am today. And, you know, she's got to go out in the world, and she's got to fend for herself. And this world's not a nice place for women. I know there's loads of progress, and we've done great things, and but there's still so much out there for women that's a risk. You know, there's so many things that I'm thinking, fucking hell, she's got to deal with that. Like, you know, I'm okay dealing with it because I'm grown up, and she is going to be grown up. But as your mum, you don't want her to have to, you know, carry pepper spray and be mindful of, you know, I always was mindful where my phone was when I was coming home in when I lived in London, and I don't want her to do that.
Yeah. And it's even, you know, smaller things than that as well, in terms of like just dealing with like the cattiness of other girls, and
think about
all of that like stuff is, you know, boys and girls arguing their friends very differently. Whereas like boys, there was always this analogy that I heard growing up, is like, boys just punch you in the face and get on with it. You're all friends the next day. Girls, drag it out.
Having 4 children, that exactly does happen. Josh Maxwell will like doof, and they're like done, and they'll carry on. And it'll happen on a PlayStation game. This is the thing. It doesn't have to be physical. It could be on the screen. Like they'll fight on the screen, and then they're done. Whereas, like, you know, Maddie carries things with her. You know, Sophia carries things with her. It is a thing.
Yeah.
It absolutely is.
And I can just relate to that as myself. And we've spoken about that before, like in all the chats we've had about friends. And I think that in itself is like really damaging in terms of like the difference and that worry. But on the flip side, to me, is, you know, I feel like there is different risk in terms of like boys walking around the streets and, you know, looking at somebody the wrong way and ending up in a fight. And, you know, less so now, but, you know, a few years ago, there wouldn't be a week or a couple of weeks that would go by when you wouldn't hear an awful tragedy on the news about, you know, a boy walking home and, you know, getting in a fight, or even just a typical bus stop outside the school ending in disaster. And those things do worry me. And I think that's why potentially like Rory and I are making decisions now for the benefit of our children, you know, where we choose to live, where we choose to send them to school, where we think we might send them to school in the future, and, you know, really trying to safeguard it to a degree. But then, you know, they're going to be going out clubbing, they're going to be going out drinking, and, you know, you want them to be able to stand up to themselves and be able to defend themselves, but sort of not be the person to throw the first punch. And it's really hard to navigate it. And I know, again, something we've spoken about before and something we probably will speak again in the future on is, you know, how do you teach right and wrong in those situations to children? Is, yes, I absolutely want you to defend yourself, but like, no, don't do this and don't do that, and this is right, that's wrong. It's a minefield.
So I think that comes down to trusting in your gut. You know how we were talking about like believing in yourself and knowing kind of what you value is right and wrong, and giving them the tools to make confident choices around what they feel is the right thing to do. Then it's like that whole thing about the next right thing. So you might have done a mistake, but what's the next right thing that you could do in terms of what you hold true and value? And just, it's interesting what you said about sort of the things that you're worried about, because literally I was talking earlier on today with someone who's got a little boy who's 7, and he got into trouble because he was scared of being beaten up, so he went along with it.
Yeah.
So again, it's that whole thing. It's not just like when they're 15. You know, he was 7, and he's a good, you know, this little kid, I love him. He's such a nice, kind, thoughtful, you know, he's a great big brother, you know, he's a lovely little boy.
It just shows.
But he was thinking ahead. He was thinking, I have a choice to make. I either go along with this so I don't get beaten up. And it wasn't that he beat anybody up. It wasn't that. It was a different scenario. I won't go into it. But at the same time, he was making a choice at 7, because he was in self-survival mode. He was protecting himself.
Yeah. And it's and that's the thing, like, there's so much to unpick with that. But those are my worries. Yeah. And I think actually, you know, it's similar between what you're worried about having a girl and what I'm worried about having a boy, but just slightly different scenarios. Like, I'm obviously not necessarily, I know it does happen, but I don't have the worry of, you know, them getting in a cab and being, you know, assaulted or whatever. But it's similar.
But it's both sides. It's, you know, what I really love about some of the things that you've said to me, literally kind of off the cuff, or when we've actually had a conversation, is that you're so motivated to teach your boys about society and about how to respect everybody and be kind to each other. You know, I do the same with Sophia. You know, there was an incident at school in our year, you know, when a little boy, got hurt. And, you know, I really took that opportunity to talk to Sophia about what, you know, how do we handle ourselves if someone's upset you, you know, don't hurt them. You know, you don't know. And again, it's really hard. They're only 5. But then how do you teach that at that point? Because I think we had the conversation about, you know, if you suspend a child at that age, they're just going to take on that kind of personality or that trait, and they go, oh, well, I'm just the kid that gets in trouble all the time. And like, you don't want that. You don't want to feel that that's their title, that's their label. You know, it's such a hard one, and I think definitely needs a bit of a revisit with some more wine, doesn't it?
Absolutely. And look, we just have to be like responsible parents. And, you know, you just said like they're only 5, but I feel like these are their formative years. Like what happens to them now is potentially going to shape them for the future. And I think that's why I feel so responsible, feel so guilty, feel, you know, all that pressure to make sure that you're doing it right. But, you know, we know that who, like, no one knows. We're all just like figuring it out, aren't we?
Well, that's it. And I think it's really, really important. I think we said this the other week as well, is that as long as you're making with all the information that you've got at hand, you're making a decision that you feel is the right one, and you're making it with love and kindness, and you're not making it vindictively or like narcissistically or whatever. Like, as long as you're making the decision with the right information that you have at that point, it's okay. Like, you've made the decision, coming from a wholly true, good place. And if it was the wrong one, it's okay.
You just got to stand by it.
Just next right thing. It's just like, it's okay. Learn, move. It's okay to kind of have that little bit of regret, that little bit of guilt, fine. But please don't hold on to it. That whole mum guilt thing, I know I've told you sort of plenty of stories when I've lost my temper or things like that. And I battle that mum guilt, and I just wish that I could let go of it. It'll take time and I will get there. But I think we all need to value that in ourselves, that we're not doing things, to make our kids like,
we're all doing what we think.
Yeah. And that's what, we've all got this.
Maybe we do, maybe we don't. And I think I'm going to take away a lot from this conversation and just like revisit it.
I think there's a couple of things here that we've actually covered that would be nice maybe to kind of go into. And do you know what would be really nice as well, actually, is we've had some lovely messages from, some of the listeners and viewers. And it's been so lovely. And if anybody's got any thoughts or any comments on it and any advice that we can share with people.
And things that you want us to talk about that maybe you're talking about with your friends. And we've had a few of those as well, and it's definitely sort of sparked your ideas in terms of future conversations that we can have. But follow, subscribe, like, share, review, all of those good
can
things.
We just give a shout out? We're so grateful for the ratings.
I know, right?
I know. I'm a little humble. But we really appreciate it, because hopefully it will help us get to people who might need to hear these things and realize that, we're all trying, and we're all trying to do what we can in the best way we can. So really grateful. And here's to another episode.
Cheers. Good one. See ya.